Hi there. In this video, we're going to go over arrays. Arrays are incredibly important data structure in Java. Data structure is just a way to combine the basic types of data that we've already looked at, like things like chars, ints, booleans, doubles, strings, objects of any class, in fact. A data structure is a way to combine those into a container that has certain properties. And probably the most important data structure in all programming is the array. It's used all the time for all kinds of things. It's because we use lists in the world for all kinds of things. It's a basic way of organizing information that we use with or without computers. So it's really important to have a way to handle lists well in computers, and arrays are one of the ways that computer programming languages handle lists. So let's just look at this illustration of an array. As you can see, its first index is 0, always. We start with 0-based addressing. So although this array length is 10, the topmost index is 9 because we started to 0 in our counting. The element that's in the array, as I said, can be anything, but they all have to be the same. So if we're storing ints in an array, all of these elements will be ints. If we're storing chars, they're all chars. If we're storing strings, they're all strings. If we're storing, as we'll see in just a minute, like objects of the dog class, like the class that you did in the last test, then each of these would be a dog object, right? And each of those objects wouldn't have like a separate variable pointing to them. They would just be referenced from the list position. So if this list was called dogs, then to get to this first dog, we would just say dogs sub 0. And I'll show you more about how to do that in just a second. Okay? Now, just to prove to you very quickly the importance of lists, here's my iTunes, and it's just full of lists, right? Here are lists of songs, lists of albums, lists of artists, lists of genres, lists of videos, list of radio stations, playlists that I've made, right? Movies that I have, TV shows, and so on, okay? So we'll go back to music. So lists are used all the time. You use them all the time, and iTunes is just one example of that. Okay? Now, back to Java. So I have here some code that does a number of things, but we'll take it line by line. In the first line, we define an array. This is how you define arrays. You do the type of element that you're going to store in the array, and then these square brackets. That's a left bracket and a right bracket, right? And that tells Java, okay, you're making a list, an array list. And then you give it a name. So that the name of this array or list is nums. And there are other ways to put elements into arrays, but this is a nice shortcut that we're going to use for the first programming problem until you get a hang of how to do things with arrays. And all you do is start with you start with a left brace, and you put in this case, since we're storing ints, you put the ints that you want to be in the array, right? So that 3, 4, 5 will be at the 0 position, 2, 3, 1 at the 1 position, etc. Okay? And the length of this array would be 8 because there are 8 integers here. You can do this with anything. Here's an array of chars, right, called letters. And in it are the letters S, P, E, N, C, E. Right? Again, S is at the 0 position, and so on. Here we have an array of strings. Same format, right? String, brackets, I called it films. So here's the first element of the array, right? And then the second element, and so on. I have 100 of them here, and these are, in fact, according to IMDb, these are the 100 most popular films of all time. So you're going to have to do some programming involved using this. As you can see, it scrolls over way over there. But anyway, doesn't matter. You don't need to worry about that. All right, now you can also make arrays of objects of classes that you've created. So remember the dog class that you created for the last test? Well, here I've made an array of dog objects called dogs. And here's another way to fill the array. Right here, within the braces, I can do new dog, call the constructor for this dog, and another new dog, and so on. I actually have 4 dogs in here, right? So these are actually creating the objects and putting them into the 0 through 3 positions of this array of dogs. Count vals is the object, sorry, is the class that you should have or should be finishing, the class that you did for the last assignment that would count the number of vowels in an input string. We're going to use that. We're going to use a count vowels object, or the count vowels class, in this program. So we're going to build on the functionality that you've already done, extend that, and use it within another class. So that's why we have to have a reference to a count vowels object here called vowel counter. Okay, inside the constructor, you know it's the constructor because there's no return type and it has the same name as the class. The reason this is called films is because when you get this from me, most of the work that you're going to be doing will involve this array of strings called films. Okay. So what we do here using a for loop from 0 to films.length. Now, if you're paying attention, you should be going, Mr. Bartels, there's something odd here, right? Why isn't, like when we did the length of a string, we always had to do the parentheses. Well, arrays are just a little different, right? They're an old data structure and they have some quirks. So don't worry about it, but just remember that you just write length. You don't do length parentheses, okay? And so what we're doing is this will go from 0 to 99, and we'll print out first the loop control variable, LC, and then films sub LC. So LC is equal to 0. So what this is going to print out the first time is the film, or the string, that's stored at position 0 in the list, right? Now let's look at the next thing. This is going to print out the 4 dogs. Again, LC starts at 0. LC is less than dogs.length. There are 4 dogs here, so it's going to go 0, 1, 2, 3. And now we say dog sub 0. That's the first dog. This one, new dog, Pippin. And we're going to call the print dog info method of that dog, right? And it will print out the age and the name and the gender of the dog. Okay, this is just we define vowel counter up above, and here we make a new count vowels with that. Okay, so let's take a look at this, see what happens. We'll make a new compile. We'll make a new films. Well, before we do that, let's just look here, right? We have, this is the class that we've just been looking at. It uses the dog class, actually makes 4 objects of the dog class. We won't see those down here on the object doc because they're all being made within films, right? They're all being done automatically instead of manually by going new dog. Right? And only when you manually create a object from a class does it show up down in the object doc. Films is calling making, films is making one object of count vowels, and count vowels uses that get data class to get data from the keyboard. We're not going to use that here, but it's there from the past, which is fine. It's not harming anything. You in fact are going to have to modify count vowels a bit to make it work here, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so if I make a new films, it's going to immediately call the constructor, as it did, and you can see it's printed out all of those top 100 movies. And here are my top 4 dogs. Right? Most of these are dogs' names that either were dogs that we had or dogs that people in my family had. So, so that's pretty cool, right? We've got list of dogs, we've got list of movies, we have list of numbers, chars, all kinds of things. All right. So let's continue on here. So say I wanted to print out only those movies that begin with a certain letter, right? So I create a method called firstLetter, which takes in a character, and then it goes through the movies, and for each movie, it checks what the character is at position 0 of the movie. And if it's equal to the letter that I passed in, say M, then it prints the movie. Those letters, those movies that whose first letter doesn't match won't be printed. So let's see how this works. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. That's also not what I meant to do. Okay, so firstLetter. So let's do all movies that begin with C. Oops. Okay, good point there. When I do that, that's the string C. I've got to give it the character, single quote C, and I'm doing capital because the first letter of the movie title would be capitalized. And these are 6 movies that all begin with capital C. Right? Do it one more time just for the fun of it. firstLetter, and we'll do R. Any movies begin with R? Raiders of the Lost Ark, Rear Window, great movie. And Raging Bull. Wow. Haven't seen Requiem for a Dream. Anyway, so that's that. Now, there are a couple of other things that you're going to have to do, which I'm not going to show you the code for, and I'm not going to give you the code for. So one of them is vowel counts, and I'll show you what it does. Vowel counts uses a method of count vowels to actually count the number of vowels in each movie. So let's see that. Okay? So here, oops, let's go up to the first movie. So the Shawshank Redemption, 2 A's, yes, A, good, right, and so on. The Godfather, there's no particular meaning to counting the number of letters in the number of vowels in a movie, but it's just an exercise that allows you to use code that you've already done, reuse code that you've already done to accomplish a task. And there's the Lord of the Rings with a lot of E's. Okay? So you're going to have to figure out how to do that. It's one thing. Now, this one's really tricky. By year. Right? And I will give you some hints about how to do this. But say that this was requiring a string. So say that I type in, I was born in 1954. Say if I want to see if any of the top 100 movies were released in 1954. Look at that. 7 Samurai and Rear Window were both released in 1954. Okay? So how did I do that? That's interesting. As I said, I'll give you some hints. I'm not going to show you the code, but there's a bunch of string functions besides charat and length that you can use to get the code for this. And in the programming assignment, I will give you some of the information about that. So you're going to have to do that too. Okay? So that's your assignment. And I'm going to stop this now. If you do have questions, as always, get in touch. Thanks.